Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. So, as you can see, I'm doing yet another trailer reaction. Today I'll be reacting to the trailer for the film The Witches, which is a readaptation of the children's novel by Roald Dahl. It's directed by Robert Zemeckis, starring Anne Hathaway, Octavia Spencer, and Stanley Tucci. Let's get into it.
My story begins when I was a young boy.
You'll be comfy here. Your mama's all wrong. I'd do anything for her to be here right now.
Grandma was a tough lady with a big heart. And little by little, she brought me out of my sadness. Now if you feel that you can't go on, darling, I didn't know it, but there was a dark shadow looming nearby. Witches. They're real, and they hate children.
Welcome.
What would you do if there were mice running all around the hotel?
I would call the exterminator.
You see, girls? He would exterminate those brats.
Rats. We would exterminate the rats. I feel this is happening.
They're here. That means a test is coming.
Oh no.
Ladies, I have a plan. Thunder, to transform a child into a mouse.
Whoa! Why are we mouses?
Nice.
Whatever.
Is that you, boy? We'll never let you get away with your filthy, evil plot. Who's gonna stop me?
Doesn't matter who you are or what you look like, as long as somebody loves you. You wouldn't happen to be carrying around a mouse on your person, now would you?
A mouse? Why on earth would I be carrying around a mouse?
Well, all right. Looks very quirky. It looks very now, if that makes sense. To start off, you guys know I always give my background. So, as I said previously, this is a readaptation of the children's novel by Roald Dahl. So, when I was a kid back in elementary school, especially I would say around the second grade, I was so into Roald Dahl's novels. Those are some of my favorite novels I read during that time. I don't know, something about his books really spoke to my imagination. They were quirky, they were creepy, and I always felt like the plots and the characters in each book were so varied and so interesting. And I always enjoyed the feeling I would have when I would read his books. It just felt like I was, I don't know, elsewhere. That's the whole point of books, is to really transport you elsewhere. And I think something about his books just were so magical, and they did a good job of balancing, you know, adult macabre humor with the innocence and quirkiness of children. And that's why I always loved his books, and still to this day love his books. And ironically, The Witches was and still is my favorite of all of his books. I would say Matilda was a close second, but I enjoyed all of them. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, Fantastic Mr. Fox, The Twits, George's Marvelous Medicine, Matilda. Man, like I was really into all of those. And like I said, The Witches was always my favorite. I thought the whole concept of witches in his book was so creepy, but so intriguing at the same time. These societies of witches and how they saw children. The fact that even if they smelled children, they would smell like dogs droppings, and they really can't hide their disgust for children. And their appearances, how on the outside, they would look like the everyday woman, beautiful and attractive, and then they would take off these disguises and these gloves, and they would have these claws and these bald, scabbed over scalps. And I was just like, whoa, like I was not prepared for some of that, but it was really cool. The fact that they had this scary diabolical leader called the Grand High Witch, and everything that goes down in that story, the twists and the turns that it takes, how it ends, like there's so much I love about that entire story. And then the fact that this young boy and his grandmother, who was actually a retired witch hunter, they are the only two people standing in the way of taking these witches down and foiling their plot to take over the world. So yeah, it's a pretty crazy story, but it's so fun to read. And of course, I'd had no idea that there was already a film adaptation that had come out in 1990. So it wasn't until I actually got into his books and read The Witches that Disney Channel just so happened to air that film. I think it was like a Friday or a Saturday night premiere, something like that. And I watched it, and man, I was blown away. I was also intensely creeped out. Like, I had already read the book, but just the way they translated some of those things to the film and to the story, I wasn't really ready for. And this is me already knowing what to expect from the story. Angelica Houston's performance was excellent. The effects and the puppetry and the whole film was just so crazy and so fun. And overall, really great adaptation of the novel. They made a couple of changes, but it didn't really take away from the story overall, so I really enjoyed it. They also added some things I wasn't expecting. Like, I didn't realize it was going to be as creepy as it ended up being. Like, I think if I had been just a little bit younger when I watched that film, I might have been traumatized. But I was just at the age where I was kind of like, okay, this is fine, but I'm still creeped out. So yeah, they did a great job with it, and I have come to love the film and the book equally. So hearing about a remake, you know how we feel about remakes. I know how I feel about remakes. For me personally, I've just come to expect that they're just going to be remakes, whether they're necessary or not. And for me, I'm not going to make a big hoopla about it. Are most of them not necessary? Are most of them a lot of times not going to be superior to the original film? Absolutely. But I'm willing to give it a chance. And for me, it's a little different when it's an adaptation of a book, because adapting a book to film is a little bit different than just remaking a film entirely. Because with books, there are a lot of opportunities to pull from the source material or not pull from the source material. And I think that with books, you have a lot more opportunities to pull from it and translate that story in a different way. You can kind of do that with a straight remake, but it's kind of different. It's just, for me, another way to adapt the story and see if you can translate it in a more interesting way or in a different way from what's come before. So looking at this film, like I said, looks very 2020. And for me, that basically means everything looks very saturated. Everything's very colorful. Everything looks very computerized and digital and enhanced, which is not a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing. I can definitely tell that this is going to be entertaining. I can tell it's going to be fun to watch. I don't think that it's going to completely capture everything the way the original film did, but I already feel like the film did its job for the time. So I will, and I've learned how to separate. Whenever it's a remake situation, I've learned how to just separate the two things. And I can appreciate what this new film is bringing to the table while also acknowledging that I love this film and it has cemented itself, you know, in my childhood memories as a great film. And even watching it in adulthood, it still holds up. And I'm definitely excited to see black faces incorporated into this story. I'm always rooting for everybody black, and I think seeing black faces in this kind of film is exciting. And I'm definitely not mad at that. I am interested in what Anne Hathaway is going to bring to this. I think she's really hamming it up, but like in a good way. It looks like she's really like, you know, leaning into the quirkiness of that role, much like Angelica Houston did in the original film. I actually saw a joke on Twitter where someone said that the Grand High Witch is given a lot of Miranda Priestley vibes from The Devil Wears Prada, and I was like, I actually can see that, which is ironic because, of course, Anne Hathaway starred in that film opposite Meryl Streep as Miranda Priestley. So yeah, I'm interested in seeing how the story unfolds in this one. I'm interested in seeing the ending in this one. I think the thing about the original novel was that it left off on a slightly unresolved note. Everything wasn't happily ever after. Everything wasn't tied up in a perfect little bow. There was still this idea of, hey, there's still these other ones out here, and what are we going to do about that? And I don't think we're going to be able to reverse some of the things that have happened, namely to the main character. So I'm interested in seeing if this film will hold true to the novel's original ending. So we'll see about that. But overall, like, it doesn't look bad. Like I said, I'm already aware that it's not going to live up to the tone or the vibe or just the overall adaptation of the book from the original film. But I think it will manage to be entertaining enough. I would say my biggest problem with this is that it just looks a little too CGI'd. I think there's a lot of special effects, a lot of green screen, a lot of extra going on. I don't think the story requires this. I'm sure they're trying to have fun with that. I think they're using the CGI and all that to make it a little more fun, a little more quirky and odd. I think the story works on its own without those things. So I would have preferred a little bit more of a muted approach to it, but I guess they said because we've already done that, we're gonna go in a different direction. So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic. Like I said, I'm gonna take it for what it is. There's always the original film, so it's not like that's gonna suddenly disappear if I enjoy this new film. I think some people think that. It's like if you enjoy a remake, it's just like, oh no, but the original, it's like, both can exist. So I'm totally fine with it being at the very least an entertaining film. If it's at least that, then I'll be okay with that. I really enjoy Octavia Spencer as an actress. I'm interested in seeing her take on this character. I am just interested in seeing how this story unfolds overall and just generally hoping it'll be something that is entertaining and at least tries to hold true to the original story. The Witches will be premiering on HBO Max, so if you guys have that, it will be streaming for free. And I'll definitely be checking it out. If you guys are interested in a review, let me know. I don't mind doing it. I may do it anyway, but yeah. So I am cautiously interested in seeing The Witches. So once again, this is D, Movie Man, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.